Hello and welcome to Journey Through Sci-Fi. My name is Matt.
And my name is James.
And this week on our journey into space, we are venturing deep into the spooky depths to talk about the horror of space.
Ooh.
And to do this, we've enlisted some expert help once again. We've hacked the lock of the cryogenic crypt, and we've exhumed the digital corpse of our favourite horror film expert. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mr. Mike Muncer.
Hello, I love that intro.
Welcome back to the show, Mike.
Spooky.
It's very good to have you back on. It's always good to have you back on.
Thank you for
Mike.
having me. It's very exciting to be here.
What do you think about the horror of space? What's scary about space, Mike?
Oh, space is scary, isn't it? I think, especially compared to the last time I was on here talking about artificial intelligence, which can be scary, but space is always scary no matter what, isn't it? I think.
It's permanently hostile.
Yeah, everything about it is terrifying, really. And movies set in space are usually scary no matter what. Like, I think there's an amazing mix of really claustrophobic, really kind of agoraphobic. It's usually really dark. It taps into all of the fears that most people have in some way or another, space.
Yeah, if it doesn't go for scares, it's at least very perilous to be in space, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I guess it's the same as, it's one of those kind of like battling with nature sort of horror, I suppose. Like the same with maybe open water shark movies or something like that.
What's
like
that?
Movies where you're kind of battling against the elements.
What's that Robert Redford film where he's on the boat?
All is lost.
All is lost. That'd be good in space.
Yeah, it would. It would. That's kind of Moon, is it? I suppose it's not really, but there must be a few films like that. One man in space by himself.
Silent Running's a bit like that.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
that's it.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they are always, there's always going to be an element of danger in every space movie. So I think it works really well for horror.
Yeah. So the two films that we're going to be talking about this week to look at the horror of space are 1997's cult classic Event Horizon and 2009's cult film Pandorum.
Oh, cult film and cult classic. He's already trademarking
Correct.
the correct titles there. Yeah,
I don't know if cult is actually too generous for the second
definitely
one.
cult. They're both cult films. I will not have anything said other than that. They're both
Fine.
cult films.
Okay, should we get right into it? Should we start talking about Event Horizon?
Let's
do
go.
it.
After 7 years in deep space,
There were 18 people on board this ship when it disappeared. I want them all accounted for.
Opening outer door.
it came back abandoned.
Any crew? Negative. This place is a tomb.
But it didn't come back alone.
Captain Miller! I've got some problems here!
So, Event Horizon from 1997. What are both your memories of this film? When did you see it? How did you see it? What do you remember of it? That kind of thing.
I must have seen it close to when it came out because I was young, I saw it on tape, and I found it very, very scary. And it lived on in my memory as that for a long time. And I don't think I ever watched it again.
My experience is almost exactly that. I saw it, I've only seen it once. I saw it when I was young. I remember my dad went to see it at the cinema and he said it was really scary and really good. He had it on VHS. I watched it. It scared the shit out of me and I've not seen it since. So this was just the second time watching it for me.
I am surprised that both of you have only ever seen it once.
I know.
Too scary.
In the previous episode where we had Mike on, you were both talking about Event Horizon as such an amazing horror film.
Yeah. Well, my memory of it was that it was this amazing thing. And actually, like, I was surprised at how much I did remember. Unless I have watched it again since and I just don't remember watching it again because I really remembered specific lines, specific images, really clearly. And in my head, it's been a long time, like 20 years since I've seen it. So, yeah.
What about you, James?
So I think I saw it. I must have taped it off the TV or something. I wouldn't have been able to get access to it otherwise. Must have secretly timed. Do you remember you could do the timing on the video recorders? Back in the day?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Setting it with the little code at the bottom of the radio.
I must have sneakily done that in the front room one day.
Nice.
And then snuck Event Horizon off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen it a couple of times since. But I think it is one of those films that sticks with you, especially if you watch it when you're younger.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those sort of like entry-level horror films, because especially for us, like we grew up in the 90s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was one of the ones which I vividly remember, and there's some really sort of graphic images. And I think watching this as a teenager or young kid, it freaks you out.
Yeah. It's an amazing, and I'm sure we'll get into all this, but it is a really brilliant balance of sci-fi and horror, like pure sci-fi ideas and pure like gothic haunted house horror. And I think there's not many horror films or sci-fi films that balance those two this well, I think, like in equal balance. I think it does it really well.
And in terms of it sticking with you, I think it's a good... It is somewhat Lovecraftian.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to do that on film. And we'll get into that. But I must have been at the age where I was old enough to just about understand what they're hinting at in this film about where the ship's been and what's been experienced. Because that was my abiding memory of it. And that's why it was scary, because I remembered nothing of the film, the actual content of the film. But I had this very distinct memory of the concept of going to this terrifying other world and it just being so horrifying.
It almost works better in some ways on children's brains, that idea, because you almost don't need to overthink it. You just know that it's this horrific place that just exists in your imagination.
Like
almost.
A fairy tale.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because actually the one thing I found watching it as an adult was that I was overthinking all of it and trying to work out the physics of it and going, hang on, what?
Oh, you can't do that.
I can't do that, yeah.
I mean, they make a big point of going against all of that half the time. The crew are just like, we don't want to know about the physics. I think that's almost a direct quote. He
Yeah,
says,
I love that.
Shut up with that. we're just talking about the reality.
In English, Duck.
Yeah.
So what do you guys know about the director, Paul W.S. Anderson? He is not my fave, I've got to be honest.
I know. You hate him, don't you, James?
I don't like him very much. But it's only because, so we'll talk about his track record of films, but there's one particular film which... has stuck with me as being terrible.
Oh, don't tease it, James. What is it?
Well, he did his first one was Shopping, which was great.
Don't know that.
I've not seen Shopping.
Shopping's brilliant. So that's sort of what got him the attention. And then straight after that, he went to Hollywood and did Mortal Kombat.
Okay.
Yes.
I've never seen it.
I think we watched it at uni, but I don't remember much about it.
I mean, it's just a video game mess of a film,
Yeah.
but it's hilarious to watch.
Yeah.
And the soundtrack is brilliant. Mm-hmm. That theme tune, that Mortal Kombat, fantastic. I think I've been to a few clubs where they played that.
What are these clubs?
Really, really cool clubs. But yeah, so he became sort of like the video game guy after that, didn't he?
Yeah. I get him confused with U-Bowl.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because he's a video game guy.
Yeah.
I think that's
who
the thing.
is not good.
No, a lot of video game directors have that stigma of being like trash filmmakers, basically, don't they? Because
'cause they make trash films.
video game movies are never that good, I
Right.
suppose, is the problem, isn't it? But yeah, he has, because I really like Event Horizon, but he has made some pretty bad films since then, hasn't he?
So, talking about video games and bad films by Paul W.S. Anderson, not Wes Anderson. He did Resident Evil, didn't he? How many of the Resident Evil films was he responsible for?
I think he did most of them,
I think he's done most of them, yeah.
Because I haven't seen them all, but I don't mind saying I quite like the ones I've seen.
So I covered Resident Evil on my podcast, actually, and because he's married to Mila Djokovic, yeah, who stars in all of them. Yeah.
Oh, this makes sense for it. The next film he's doing as well. So he's doing a version of Monster Hunter.
Oh, is he?
Which is a game by Capcom.
With absolutely no plot.
Yeah.
As far as I'm aware.
Well, it's got a bit of a plot in the game. Not much, though. And yeah, she's in it.
It's really interesting. And I'm not trying to skip ahead, but he produced Pandorum, I think, didn't he, as well?
Yeah, he was definitely involved.
To me, in my memory of Paul W.S. Anderson movies, Pandorum looks more like a Paul Anderson film than Event Horizon to me. Like, there are elements of Pandorum where I'm like, oh, this looks like the guy that made Resident Evil or
Even
Alien
the way
versus
you're saying
Predator.
that is so loaded.
Event Horizon, in terms of what it looks like Jason X, right?
I would say it looks a lot better.
And like a
Jason
nicer
X,
version.
but
Yeah, because it's got that dark feel, which when we spoke about Jason X on Mike's podcast.
Yeah, on my Patreon, exactly. Yeah, yeah, it does. Although, and obviously, it's got that kind of 90s CGI, which is pretty bad in places.
I thought
Event
it was
Horizon,
quite good.
but the practical effects and I think the set design is amazing in this film. I think like when it's not got bad like globules of liquid floating around on screen.
Oh, yeah, the globules. Right.
I think the set is incredible. I love the kind of the bridge and the rotating tunnel and the rooms, and it kind of looks a bit Geiger-esque in places.
So, Geiger-esque.
Yeah.
The film which I was going to mention earlier is Alien versus Predator.
Right.
Is that by him?
Yeah.
Oh,
that
that's a bad one.
was so disappointing.
Yeah, an infamous flop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when I saw that he directed that, I was like, that's the guy I don't like. That's the guy. I don't like him.
Yeah,
Did you
you famously, James, like most films and most filmmakers. Like, when we were at uni, you were always the one person that went, I thought it was all right, when everyone else hated everything, except for Paul W.S. Anderson. And James was like, oh, I fucking hate him. Oh, not that guy.
That and King Kong, the King Kong remake by Peter Jackson.
Yeah,
Not for me.
Yeah, so unfair about King Kong.
But
as well.
I like to sort of like, when I watch a film, there's always some sort of redeeming quality about it. You invest that much of your time into watching a film. People have spent so long putting it together. There's been a massive production team. I like to try and find the silver lining in any of the films that I watch.
Yeah.
Even if it's a bit difficult to find.
No, I agree with you now. I think I'm much more like that now. I kind of try and find something to appreciate in everything. But it's just hilarious that you were so anti Paul W.S. Anderson, though, no matter what. Like no matter all the other films that you stuck up for.
This is why it's good that I'm doing the podcast with Matt, because Matt will let me know if he doesn't like a film.
I really love about both of your personalities that you feel that way about films, but I just don't feel that way at all.
Although, for the record, I agree with Matt 100% on Star Wars Episode 9.
Ooh,
yeah.
Okay. Anyway, Event Horizon.
Hang on, James, I want to know what you thought of it, because you hate Paul Anderson. What do you think of Event Horizon, though?
So I like Event Horizon, but it's a mess. It's a mess. It's style over substance. That's what the film is. Yeah, you can't deny that.
It does get into that,
I guess it is. I guess it is, because my main enjoyment was looking at how cool everything was.
Yeah, and I think that was Paul Anderson's main enjoyment in making the film.
Yeah.
It's just to how cool it was. So let's talk a little bit about how cool the set design was.
And the ship design as well.
Yeah, the ship design
from
specifically.
outside, it looks amazing.
So apparently he based that ship design on sketches of Notre Dame Cathedral.
Oh, right. Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because I think as soon as you see it, that's that amazing like moment when it's revealed through the storm, and there's literally thunder and lightning over it, and it is like something out of an old Universal horror movie. It's like a gothic mansion from the beginning, right? It is like so many people talk about movies like Alien being the ultimate kind of haunted house in space, but this is much more that. I think this is a proper haunted house movie in space.
This goes for that vibe more directly than Alien does, I think.
Definitely, because it's that the place itself is evil as well, so it's really got that vibe, and it really felt like, I don't know how cine literate Paul Anderson is with the classics, but it felt like he was nodding to certain movies like Hellraiser and The Shining and The Haunting, and
I definitely
loads of
thought
stuff
about Hellraiser a lot when we were dealing with the horrors of the other dimension.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have seen Hellraiser when I first saw this.
No, me neither.
I saw that much later, but
Yeah.
that's a film that does that better.
Yeah.
The idea of there being a just terrifying alternate realm
Other
where
world.
everything is just pure horror, and some people have popped in there and gone completely out of their minds.
Yeah.
It hints at that, and it doesn't execute it very well in this film, especially in the very end. I think the build-up of Event Horizon is amazing.
Yeah,
the
it's
first
the best
half,
part, yeah.
so good. It didn't really deliver on that.
But yeah, I think the set's incredible.
But the
all
way
through.
you talk about it as a sort of haunting house kind of vibe, it's like a ghost ship, isn't it? It's a ghost ship story.
Exactly.
Sort of something like The Flying Dutchman.
Yeah.
It's that, and that's like on a dark and stormy night.
Yeah.
So it's not space in this film, which is quite an important part of it. It's set in the sort of atmosphere of a planet, isn't it?
Yes,
Neptune?
in Neptune's kind of in Neptune's atmosphere. Yeah.
So there's like a storm, and that's constantly an environment they're in. They're not out in the sort of like harshness of space, which we're so used to seeing in these space films, which we've been looking at.
Yeah.
So that really adds to the horror element.
It really does. It's really clever, I think, because it is like just setting it just outside of, or kind of within the orbit of Neptune. It has all of those elements like storms and all of that, but then it also does still include all of the horrors of being in a vacuum, I guess, because there's that horrific moment when the guy's in the airlock and like all of that, and another moment when a guy just gets sent off through space in his spacesuit, and there's all of those dangers still, as well as all of the storms and elements and everything else they're battling.
Yeah. And sort of like, again, with the sort of like the haunting aspect of it.
Yeah.
So the guy who wrote the film, Philip Eisner, he wrote in his pitch, basically the idea was The Shining in space.
Yeah, I mean, you
And
could
that's
so
what it is,
tell.
isn't it?
There is even a moment when there's I don't know what it is. It's like a big glass like pillar, and it's filled with this green liquid. And at one point, that liquid turns red, and it bursts through the glass and comes out. And it is literally the elevator of blood shot in The Shining. It looked like an exact nod to it, in a kind of B-movie way. But yeah, you could definitely tell that it was going for a Shining vibe.
Yeah,
And Sam Neill's good fun as the Jack Torrance.
So good.
Degeneration into madness that he does. It's very
so
fun.
good. And I guess the fact that they're all haunted by these ghosts and these figures that just appear in corridors or that appear in the ship with them, like these weird people from their past or whatever it might be. That's very like Overlook Hotel as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and even the corridors, there's entrances which look like coffins.
Yeah.
So there's so much in the actual set which sort of leads to those kind of like it aids in all those themes and what the film's doing.
Yeah.
And the Hellraiser aspect as well. So you've got the drive, the gravity drive, which is kind of looks like the puzzle box from Hellraiser, doesn't it? It's got those kind of vibes to it.
Yeah,
I think
it does.
That's what they based it around loosely.
Yeah, they definitely went for a Hellraiser vibe, didn't they, with this? 100%. Like the occasional like visions or flashes of this other world and what you see people being put through. And there's a moment when a person is like strung up, like their skin is on hooks and stuff.
Yeah,
and that is
direct.
100% Hellraiser. Yeah, it's a direct nod. Yeah.
The flayings and...
Yes, exactly.
Gross.
Yeah. Love it.
And that's all happening in like the distress signal, isn't it? So they decode the last messages of the original crew of the Event Horizon, and it's all like video recordings of that sort of thing happening.
Yes.
So are we to assume that they're in the wormhole space when that's being recorded?
Because they just jumped in the drive, haven't they? Because it's like the way Sam Neill describes it is it's a wormhole, isn't it? He says it's like a faster than light drive, but it's not because that doesn't work.
Yeah,
they do the thing that Interstellar does, which I thought was hilarious. I thought, I wonder if Chris Nolan has just copied this film. But yeah, where he folds the piece of paper in half and sticks the pencil through it. That is exactly what happens in Interstellar. I was like, that's amazing. Yeah. They literally use that demonstration. But yeah, the thing I couldn't work out, right? So the ship itself is traveling through a black hole, right? And it goes from wherever it is outside of Neptune to this other place outside of the universe.
I think I know what you're going to say. Yeah.
But then what's the big hole, the big like Stargate gate inside the gravity room
like the drive,
that they go through? That the young guy, the kind of first victim, he goes through it. What is that? What is that thing? Is that a portal within the ship? It's
that's the drive itself that generates the gateways that they go through. But yeah, it's very unclear because why is the gateway inside the ship when the ship goes through
when
the gateway?
Ship is traveling? Exactly.
I don't know, some hypercube stuff in it.
Also, Sam Neill's character, is it Professor Veer?
Yeah, that's it. Weir. Yeah.
He doesn't know what it is either.
No, and what is...
And he never explains it.
So can we just talk about him for a minute? Because what is his motivation through... Like, is he bad from the start?
No,
is he plotting this whole thing? Is he possessed at some point midway through the movie?
Well, he seems like the protagonist at the start, doesn't he?
Yeah. And we're kind of quite aligned with him. Like, we see his nightmares and his trauma and his... So I kind of thought, okay, he's our kind of conduit into this world, but then he very much turns into this other like antagonist, doesn't he? So I was quite confused at what point that happens and why that happens and who he is in this story, really.
Who replaces
what
him as the protagonist? I guess it's Lawrence Fishburne.
Definitely Lawrence Fishburne.
But Lawrence Fishburne he feels like a very small character at the start.
Yeah.
And then he is forced by circumstance to step up into the sort of action hero.
Yeah, he becomes the protagonist when at the start you think he's more of an antagonist character.
Yes, because he's kind of stopping Sam Neill's character from doing what he wants to do.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that Sam Neill is so, like, Professor Weir is so desperate to get onto this ship and everything. And you kind of realise at the end that's for like kind of evil means. But what is his intention at the beginning?
Well, he invented it.
Yeah,
he's the designer of it. So it's a project that he sees as like his baby. That's his motivation.
Yeah,
and he's also has his wife died or broken up with him?
It's a bit Solaris, isn't it?
She's cut her wrist in the bath, right?
So he's also running away from some trauma.
Yes,
That's sort of driving him away, and what's pulling him towards is the kind of the sense of responsibility. This is my project. I have to know what happened. I have to get to the bottom of this puzzle box mystery.
Yeah.
And then he goes mad. Then he goes Jack Torrance possessed by the spirits or
by
whatever.
the ship.
Yeah.
Yeah. He becomes the kind of human embodiment of the ship almost, doesn't he? Like the voice of it.
But he is basically the character from Solaris, isn't he? Because he's being haunted by ghosts of his past. He sees his ex-wife everywhere. His ex-wife who killed herself, which is exactly the plot of Solaris.
Yeah.
And it's just a bit more, it goes down a darker
schlocky.
route. Yeah. It's very schlocky. This
It is.
film.
It's like a schlockier version of all these other movies. Because also there's an element of him that reminded me as well of a kind of mad doctor from an old like 30s Universal film, like Frankenstein or something, who's kind of obsessed with his own creation and is his own downfall almost in some way.
Yeah, it's almost a shame that it's made really explicit that he is being like possessed by a demonic force. It would have been cool if he just went completely insane in the same way that like a Dr. Frankenstein goes insane, because it's like
the power.
Yeah. That would be a more compelling character journey for Sam Neill.
Yes.
And Sam Neill would be very good at that. Yeah. Rather than sort of becoming this sort of demon figure.
Yeah. But I think a lot of that is due to the time scale that they had to make this film, because it was rushed into production by Paramount, because Titanic was supposed to be done in the summer. So James Cameron was going to release Titanic, and they were all set to do that, and then they had to hold it for a bit because Paramount had the rights for Titanic in America for the distribution there. And so basically they needed a film to fit the summer slot all of a sudden because Titanic wasn't going to be done in time. So then Event Horizon got pushed forward. And because Paul Anderson was such a young director, they were kind of like, we can just make this film quicker. So he had, I don't know how long it was, but it was a ridiculous timescale. And I think it was something like...
Imagine James Cameron running behind schedule on something.
James Cameron doesn't play by anybody's rules.
Except James Cameron's.
So the movie was officially greenlit a mere 10 weeks before production was due to begin.
Oh, wow.
So that's really quick turnaround time.
Because actually, again, considering how good the sets look, like it looks like they spent a lot of time on the look of it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably more than the rest. But
and the original cut was 130 minutes.
Wow.
And they were all set, and he had to rush that through. He showed it in test screenings to audiences, but they hadn't done half the effects. They hadn't done the audio mixing. So it looked really bad.
Yeah.
And they put it in front of audiences, and audiences were like, this is shit. So then the producers started shitting themselves and were like, fuck, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? So then he had to cut loads of the gore out because he really wanted this to be like a hard 18 film.
Yeah.
He wanted it to be violent and gory. I mean, one of the people they got in was the guy who wrote Seven to add extra bits to the blood orgy scene.
Right.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Just for that.
Just for that. And he added one extra bit I was reading about where there's a bit where someone's tooth gets taken out by a screw or something like that.
Is there?
And this was taken out.
Oh, right. Sorry.
And they find it floating around, so they grab the tooth. And this was supposed to be like when they come into the ship.
Oh.
And someone was so in that blood orgy scene as well, which is really famous.
Yeah.
There apparently is a bit in there where someone's getting sodomized by a woman with an iron pipe. And this was all sort of like, you could see this more graphically in that original cut.
Oh.
I could have gone for a bit more blood.
Yeah. Hashtag release the original cut.
Yeah.
But they can't. Because
this is good.
Yeah.
Why can't they do it?
So basically, they weren't keeping backup footage of stuff at the time because it was all shot on film.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Anderson wanted to do a director's cut afterwards. He wanted to get that footage back, but it just went missing. So they were like, where the hell's that footage? They found some of it in, I think this is right, like a salt mine in Transylvania.
That's what I heard. It's since been removed from the Wikipedia page.
Yeah.
But I definitely read that a few months ago.
I would love it if that's the truth.
The spookiest place.
But then they found it and then they couldn't use it. So, but there are still these rumors about this sort of these missing tapes just lurking around somewhere.
I know where they are.
I love that. Did you know there's
they're
through the gate? Yeah, they're on the other side. There is a missing scene from The Wicker Man that is buried somewhere underneath the M25 that no one's ever seen.
The spookiest motorway.
Don't let Mike near the M25. He's going to take it all out.
It's just
Little
outside
metal
Junction
detector.
9.
I'm getting close. Is that what the map in your bedroom?
Yeah, exactly. Every now and then, I just stand on the spot where it is, where it lies. That's really cool. Yeah, I agree with you though, Matt. I could have seen them push it a bit further. The horror,
because there were not many details of the film that stuck with me.
Yeah,
that scene, it's scary and it's graphic.
Yeah.
But then actually you watch it as an adult and it's just a couple of glimpses.
It's really quick.
Yeah.
And other than that, it's just a lot of people with no eyes for most of the rest of the film.
Which looks really bad.
Really bad. Apart from Sam Neill at the end when he's got all the cuts on his face. I think that looks quite cool.
That's the other thing that stuck with me in my head.
Me
is
too.
Sam Neill covered in cuts.
That's the image I remembered as a kid.
Gouging out his eyes.
Exactly.
Miller?
So what were your favourite deaths? What really stuck with you when you watched it the first time?
I think the one that stuck with me is and actually I suppose it's not technically a death because he doesn't die, but the scene when the guy is in the airlock, I think is a really horrific scene. And this always scares me in sci-fi, in space, when people are in danger of getting sucked out of an airlock. I just think it's such a horrible idea and a horrible way to die. Like the idea of the pressure and his eyeballs coming out of their sockets and all the veins inside him sort of bursting, all of that. And it's quite prolonged in Event Horizon. It goes on and on and on. And there's the countdown timer on the door. I think it's really well directed. Again, for Paul Anderson, I think he did a really good job of kind of making it really suspenseful and building that dread.
Is it not slightly undercut by Lawrence Fishburne calling him Baby Bear?
Yeah, that is weird, isn't it? That is weird.
I agree with you. That is a really good scene.
Yeah.
What I loved about that scene is he's like possessed by the ship or whatever.
Yeah.
And he snaps out of it just as he's like locked in the airlock.
And he's like, "What are you doing? Let me out!"
Yeah.
Oh God, it's really powerful. I really liked it. I don't know why they felt the need to let him survive that in a way.
Because he doesn't die, does he?
No, he spends the rest of the film in a tank, but it's like, why not just kill him off?
Yeah.
But anyway,
Is he not the one that gets flayed by Sam Neill at the end?
No, that's the Doctor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Is that Jason Isaacs? Or is
Yeah.
that, yeah. But that wasn't even a kill, sort of specifically, I suppose. But that was my favourite moment of sort of horror in the film. I would say
always those moments when that aids the idea of the horror of space.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you've got the claustrophobic elements which you mentioned earlier, but you've also got the threat from outside. You are, when we talked about Apollo 13, we talked about how thin the walls were. It's like a piece of tinfoil or something.
How
ridiculous.
small and cramped.
You're just never far away from that deadly environment.
Yeah, it's horrible, isn't it? And the everything, and even the payoff of what happens to him is scary and horrific. Like when he does then get sucked out of the airlock, and Lawrence Fishburne has to kind of catch him and bring him back in, and you see all of his veins kind of popping out and blood coming out of his eyes, and the blood liquid is kind of floating around and coming out of his face and stuff. It's really good. I really like it.
Oh my God. It's starting. My eyes.
Don't think about him. Shut him. Just shut him as tight as you can.
5 seconds.
Tuck yourself into a crouch position. Make yourself into a ball now.
I can't breathe. Oh God. Oh God.
I do think that scene lost a little bit by the fact that it was this fog and this mist everywhere, though. Because obviously that's a great sort of like horror aspect to it, but the sort of like how big space is and how all-encompassing that darkness is what really freaks me out.
Yeah.
So I think it lost a bit of that, like that getting lost in the abyss element for it with that. And then the only guy who goes out of the atmosphere, there's loads of stars.
Yeah.
And it looks really sort of like put on. It kind of doesn't have that element of the horror in space.
No, I suppose it doesn't, like the vast nothingness kind of thing. Yeah, no, that's true. It doesn't, I suppose. Because again, there's that moment when the other character does get sucked into space in his spacesuit and he just gets sent off.
And he also doesn't die, does he?
No. They could have killed a few more people in space, I think, couldn't they? But because actually those moments to me were more tense and scary than the actual Lovecraftian supernatural stuff that was happening to a lot of them. At least watching it this time around as an adult, I was much more I was much more involved in those moments where it was just the perils of space, I suppose.
You're probably quite desensitized to it as well, the amount of horror films you watch, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe.
Thinking about it, though, there aren't that many deaths in the film.
No.
No, it's a crew of 6-ish, 6 or 7.
Half
and-
survive.
Yeah.
So there's 3
So
deaths.
I guess, the best death has got to be the Doctor then, hasn't it?
Yeah, the
It's
flame.
flayed
Yeah.
and positioned. It's like Messiah.
Yeah.
And his organs are all out on the sort of like the table.
Yeah. And there's some cool moments. I like it when they activate the gravity for the first time and that frozen body falls and shatters into like a million pieces. That's quite cool.
So a weird story about that as well. So apparently when they were doing the original shot of that, one of the special effects guy, I don't know if this is true. This is one of the rumors. One of the special effects guys was a bit disgruntled at the time, obviously because the schedule's so quick and they have to get things done.
Yeah.
He'd hidden a Barbie doll inside the body, which was going to shatter. So they had to shoot the whole scene again because it shattered and this Barbie doll came flying out. I really hope that's true because it's so random.
Yeah.
I hope so.
I love all these sort of like
That means,
rumors.
So they really shattered a frozen mannequin.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Fair
Love
enough.
it. Love it.
Yeah, because there's quite a mix of CGI and special effects in this, aren't
Yeah,
there?
there are. Yeah. You can definitely tell when it's the CGI. That's the thing. You can tell the difference when it's one or the other.
I thought it was quite good. I think you were right. You said earlier about the sort of globular effects. It's very like PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
But there were bits that I thought looked quite good, not just the practical stuff. When they first get there and there's just like an axe floating.
Oh yeah,
You could see the CGI, but I thought this looks good. 1997. This looks decent. I like this.
Yeah. Again, for what it is, for like a kind of schlocky B movie from the 90s. Yeah, I was surprised at how good it looked overall. Definitely.
Overall, as well, I feel like I should say, I was just really surprised by how good the whole thing was overall.
Me too. Yeah.
I really thought. So we talked about Jason X on your podcast, and we remembered it so well, and
Once
we thought
again,
it was
me
amazing.
and Matt going, it's brilliant.
Yeah. But then watching it again, it was just absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
I was kind of expecting the same from Event Horizon.
Yeah.
And I really did enjoy it. I think the last 20 odd minutes kind of like just loses track of everything and goes to shit.
It really does lose
And
it.
I think it's difficult, like, just to bring up like the kind of Lovecraftian element of it as well. Like that's, like you said, Matt, it's really hard sometimes to put Lovecraft on screen because his stories are all about monsters that are beyond comprehension or evil or pain or fear that is something that is inconceivable. And so filmmakers have to find a way to still put that on screen kind of thing, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And I think it did get to a point in this film where it's like, what is this darkness? What is it that's actually haunting them all? And they had to kind of show it, I guess.
Yeah, and then they sort of decide, well, it's the ship. It's been
Yes.
possessed by something bad,
Yeah.
but we're going to refer to it as it's the ship, which that didn't track with me to
No.
sort of try and
I don't know,
personify
I
it.
quite like that idea, sort of like, because it is a ghost ship and
Yeah.
it's a ghost ship story in space.
Yeah.
And I like that as a concept because it harks back to an older generation of horror films, but it's modernizing it. But at the same time, it's a different kind of take on it with this whole dimension aspect and the Lovecraftian stuff in there.
Yeah.
So I like that sort of like amalgamation of all those different bits.
Yeah, and I like I like it when sci-fi and horror blend together like this, where you've got supernatural stories, but also they kind of weave in a potential scientific explanation for it. Like there's that writer Nigel Neal who does loads of that in his sci-fi. He did Quatermass and stuff, but he also did stories like there's this really interesting one from the 70s called The Stone Tape, which is kind of a haunted house movie, but it kind of gives it this scientific kind of theory behind it that stone is able to kind of, I can't remember exactly what it is, but they explain that it kind of can carry memories, and sometimes those memories can actually kind of create noise under certain atmospheres or something, and that's what ghosts are and stuff. And he basically wrote all of these horror stories but gave them scientific kind of theories behind them.
Nice.
It's really interesting. And this kind of feels a bit like that, where, it is The Shining. It is just a haunted house monster film, but, not very well, but they've attempted to given it this kind of relativity, physics, kind of scientific wormhole, black hole thing behind it, which is, I quite like that about it.
It is a good melding of the two genres.
Yeah.
Better than Jason X.
Definitely better than Jason X.
Yeah, but I think the plot is all over the place. And like, there's no sort of like real character motivations for me, which is kind of like where it fell down.
I don't know. Well,
I don't
guess
know. I'm very particular about how I like my character. I like really fleshed out, and I like to know their drives and sort of.
Yeah.
I want to feel for them
yeah,
more. But
it is a
it's a horror film.
Yeah.
So you have to negate that aspect of it.
It is a bit clumsy the way they just like each character in turn gets a flashback, so you know that they've got a family member that they're upset about. That's not character development. That's just
it's true.
Oh, this lady's got a son and now she's dead.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, you kind of get a little backstory. I guess it's like 1 or 2 lines on each person. It's like, oh, that's the woman that has the kid. That's the guy who has the, whatever. It's like that.
And it's like
it?
they are being haunted by different aspects.
Yeah.
And different things that have happened in their past.
Yeah.
Talking about the character of Peters, she's seeing her son, and then you see the horrendous things he's got on his legs and bits like that, all that elements of the haunting. And then Weir, who I remember Weir's name because there's one bit when one of the characters is shouting at him, and I just thought he was saying Weir as if he's weed all over the place.
You Weir.
Weir.
Well, Rihanna pointed out, I watched it with Rihanna, she pointed out that at the beginning when you see all of them in hypersleep in their tanks, Weir is the only one that has a label on it that says Weir, and all the rest don't. And she was like, why is his the only name that is written in ink on the tank and no one else's has, which is hilarious.
What did you guys think about the crew as it stands, like in terms of their characters and how they were on the ship? Because we've seen in these space films, the crew is an essential part for any space mission.
Yeah.
How effective did you think they all were?
I thought they were about as effective as most space movies are, to be honest. Like, as in space horror films. So, for example, Alien or Sunshine, or they're kind of archetypes in a way. There's like the mechanic. There's one that's always a bit maybe laddie and loudmouthy. There's one that's like really scientific and cynical, or there's that they seem to like all kind of fit certain archetypes on spaceships in space films because they all have their specific jobs, and with those jobs often comes certain types of personalities.
Different
I think
character traits.
Yeah.
But some films do that better. Like,
Yeah.
I can only tell you the jobs of like 2 characters in Event Horizon.
Yeah.
The captain and the doctor. Like,
Yeah.
what does anybody else do? The guy who gets blown out of the airlock, that's just like the sort of scary movie Wayans Brothers comic relief guy. What is his job on the ship?
He has
like
all the best lines.
He's like the guy that fixes the ship or something. They do make a kind of throwaway line about it, like he's the one that will fix it in.
No,
Is he
because there's like a
mechanic or
head.
something?
Yeah, but there's like a head engineer, isn't there?
Yeah.
And it's not him.
It's a good question. Yeah.
I don't know what any of them do apart from there's a doctor who is like very clearly, you're the doctor. Can I have some I don't know what they say.
Yeah, and he goes mental at one point, just puts a scalpel to someone's neck for no reason. He's just like, no, the ship is not haunted.
Actually, it's funny watching it again now as an adult and realising how many of those actors are really famous. I was like, it's Jolie Richardson and Jason Isaacs and Lawrence Fishburne and all these people, like Sam Neill, obviously. But like, I don't think, apart from Sam Neill, I didn't remember all of these famous faces being in the film as well.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that helps when the characters are even a bit thinly drawn because you can kind of just know all the actors.
Yeah,
well,
exactly.
Lawrence Fishburne is so good in this.
Yeah,
like,
he's always good.
He's very much like Morpheus. This is 2 years before Matrix came out, but he's the leader of this ragtag band, and he's very shouty but calm at the same time kind of guy. He's
got
very
a lot
good
of
at that.
presence, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He really holds a lot together in this film.
Yeah.
As much, even though I was just saying how much I liked it, but
Yeah, no, I think it's true because actually, as hammy as the film gets at times, he plays it like deadly straight as well the whole way through. Like he's acting like he's in a really serious film, which Sam Neill isn't always. I don't think.
no. Can we talk about the way Sam Neill screams?
Oh,
Oh yeah, God, that
Actually, Chris Hewitt, who presents the Empire podcast, came on my podcast once and said his favourite character was Sam Neill from Event Horizon. And he did this impression where he goes, "Do you say? Do you say?" And like that quote is like stuck in my head. But yeah, he's got an interesting voice in this, hasn't he? And definitely an interesting scream.
I think I've never. It made me think: have I ever seen this actor scream convincingly in a film? And I think some people just can't scream.
No.
Like it's fine. It's like some actors can't cry.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it might be his thing. He just can't. It's like if Alan Partridge had to scream.
Yeah, that is what it's like. It is. It's that same sort of tone.
If anyone's listening knows any other instances where Sam Neill has been screaming in a film.
And it wasn't weird.
Yeah, can you let us know if that's genuinely his scream?
Because I've watched a lot of horror films recently with Sam Neill, because he is in a few he was in The Omen 3 as Damien when he's an adult. He is in The Mouth of Madness, which is another Lovecraftian horror film, like directed by John Carpenter.
Any screaming?
I'm just trying to think.
He wouldn't be screaming as Damien, would he? Because
No.
I haven't seen that one.
And he doesn't scream in Jurassic Park, does he? No matter how much he gets attacked
he
by
knows what he's
dinosaurs.
doing.
He holds his shit together.
Look after them kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he can't scream.
There you go.
Says Stephen, this is embarrassing, but I can't scream when I'm dying. Stephen, mate, I'm sorry.
Sorry about that.
Won't be screaming in this scene. We're going to have to take another look at this.
I like following his Twitter account because it's just him on a farm,
He's
just
so
taking
cute,
pictures with like
Amazing.
animals.
He is living such a charmed life.
He is. He really is.
So talking about the nationalities of people, did you notice all the flags that they had? It was mainly just American flags on the
I saw
their
a few, yeah.
suits.
What else did they have apart from American?
I couldn't spot many.
Well,
but I
because
think they had
Jodie
a few
Richardson's
others,
British, isn't she?
Yeah.
But I didn't notice if she had a British flag. But
Because we've seen her on a few other films, sort of like this idea of a multinational space group going into space.
Yeah.
And I was just interested to see whether that really came through. But I don't think it comes. It's very heavily American, isn't it?
It does seem to be.
And a few Brits.
Yeah. There are a few Brits in there as well, aren't there? So I guess it doesn't really make a point of that, does it? Because also, isn't the setup that they've all left Earth now and they all live on the moon and Mars and other places?
I was just going to ask, what do we actually learn about Earth in the setup?
I think it's the classic, isn't it, that so many of these films start off, which is like they've used all of Earth's resources, they've gone off and found... Because I think the setup, although it turns out not to be true, is that Event Horizon was sent off to find other habitable planets. Or am I thinking of Pandorum?
I get,
This and Pandorum have
That's my
similar
segue.
start. So in this one, it was 2015, the first permanent colony is established on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
Then in 2032, they start mining Mars. And then after that, they send the first deep research vessel into space, into deep space.
Right, so it's a pure research and exploration sort of setup. It's not calamity on Earth.
Right.
Right.
The setup reminded me a bit of Ad Astra as well, because we've got Ad Astra where the guy's dad is lost outside Neptune. It's Neptune as well, isn't it? And they have to go to Neptune to rescue him.
Yeah. Because this is like it's basically a search and rescue kind of voyage, isn't it, into space. That's why they're there. And Weir wants them to go and look at Event Horizon, but these like pilots don't want to go because they're at the end of their shift, basically. And they've sort of been roped into it.
Yeah. Which felt very alien as well, this idea of this kind of reluctant crew of just people that wanted to go home and get forced on this job or a forced diversion from their route or whatever. Yeah.
Private industry kind of sense to it. Because we don't, because with the not being clear about what country they work for, it's not NASA, it's not a national...
It's like IASA or something.
Yeah.
It's like an eye on the...
But it's not a sort of nationalised thing.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't have the sense of that. It does seem like a private expedition.
Yeah.
And you've got this conflict between sort of the almost military people on the ship and the scientists. And there's always this kind of like military versus science aspect to all these films.
Yeah, that's basically Lawrence Fishburne versus Sam Neill in this, isn't it? It's those two kind of ideas, Yeah,
so it's doing all the usual space film stuff, which we've seen so far, but it's got all of this extra layer on top, which is like interesting to see.
Yeah.
I also loved the green air vent or whatever it is that he crawls through.
The Matrix style one.
Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was cool. Although that is the shot that looked the most Paul Anderson to me.
So how does it kind of deal with what are the kind of psychological effects of just being in space, and how does Event Horizon deal with those and present them to us?
I don't know how well that does present. Like you said, James, I don't know if it's that interested in the being in the black void of space as much as it is about this ship. It's more about the personality of this ship, isn't it? And what this ship means more than anything. But I guess the fact that they are on the other side of Neptune, millions and millions, they say they're like 50 million clicks or whatever, don't they, from the nearest communication, whatever it is. So I guess there is definitely that feeling of isolation that you get in all the best horror space movies where there's literally nowhere to go. But other than that, it's much more about the ship than it is about space, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. But I think their personal traumas are sort of coming to the surface because that's what they're being haunted by. And I think a lot of these films, you see what's happened to the characters previously, and that's what makes them become a bit unstable in some of these instances. It's the personal trauma they've had previously that sort of comes to the surface when they're in space.
Yeah, I suppose there's also an element of the space within space, which is this void that we never actually get into, but we get hints of and we get video recordings of. That's like we talk about how you can just be driven mad by the concept of being in space.
Yes.
Event Horizon kind of steps that up maybe a notch by saying there's another kind of space that's going to drive you even more mad if you go in it. Like if you even set foot here, you're gonna lose your shit completely.
And it is the kind of thing that does make my brain feel a bit like it's going to explode. Like when you think about the idea of a universe and what's outside it, or what is, like if you keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and where does that go, kind of thing. I guess that's the whole point of what Event Horizon is saying. But it is quite a scary concept that if you think about it for too long, you're like, oh yeah, what?
Yeah, and it's easy to see why that's so hard to do on film, though, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Because that exists in your mind, and like you were saying, like that's how Lovecraft writes.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same problem with a lot of Stephen King films. Is that when Stephen King as a writer is at his best, it's when he's making you think about how creepy it would feel to be in a situation.
Yes.
But not because of something scary external. It's just like, oh, what would you be thinking about? You'd be thinking, this is weird. That's what like gets under your skin about a good Stephen King novel. And that can be incredibly difficult to put on film in a successful way.
Definitely, yeah.
So the psychological effects are definitely there in this film, but I think they're more prominent in the next film, which we're going to be looking at, which is Pandorum for 2009. So shall we start talking about that?
Let's.
Do you know the symptoms of Pandorum? Starts with a shiver, an itch, a slow boil. The biological side effects of flying deep space, feeding into paranoia.
Your mind has turned against itself.
Help!
So Pandorum, a cult film, not a cult classic.
That's a word for it. Yeah.
Wow, Mike's going straight in. Had you guys watched this film before?
Yeah, I saw it closer to when it came out. Like a year or two after it came out. I think it was on like Film 4 or something.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I had, but this film, I didn't remember any of it, so I don't think I'd seen it.
Okay.
Had you?
I'd seen it when it came on Netflix.
Oh, was it on Netflix?
It was on Netflix for a bit. Yes, I saw it not that long ago.
Okay. I saw it ages ago. I really couldn't remember very much of it. First of all, it's a very confusing film.
Quite confusing, yeah.
What the fuck was going on in this film?
But I knew that there was a massive twist that I hated when I first saw it.
Twist.
The whole film just like not remembering anything, being like, but what happens at the end? And then I thought there's a big twist. There's a plot twist.
Yeah, there's two twists, right?
Built up over about half an hour. And I was like, okay, I know what it is. It's this guy. I know what it is.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the thing that pissed me off when I first saw it. And then when I finally got to the end, I was like, oh yeah, that's really stupid.
We'll get to the
I don't know why I'm being coy about it because we're going to talk about it, but we will
get to that big twist though. So Pandorum, it's
a space disease.
It's a space disease, yeah. So what is Pandorum then? What is the title?
It's the
Space Madness.
Space Madness, perfect, yeah.
Space Madness.
Yeah.
It's a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of like, I can imagine this would be something that real captains of like ships and planes and whatnot would go for. Well,
it's cabin fever, right?
Yeah.
It's literally cabin fever, yeah.
It reminded me of like the reason stories about mermaids exist is because sailors just went totally insane and horny on long voyages and saw like manatees and were like, that's a woman with a fish's tail and I love her.
I want to have sex with her.
It's the same thing. It's just going absolutely crazy because you've been on a boat for like 8 months and you just see the same 4 guys every day and you hate them. Like, it's the same thing, and that's what Pandorum is, right?
Yeah.
And funnily enough, being underwater, it's actually very similar to that map. But anyway, yeah.
So it all begins with like, so it's kind of like a mystery as well. You don't really know what's going on, as we've already established. I don't know if you guys know what happened either, from the sounds of it.
Because I messaged you guys when I was watching it, because I literally had to, I had to read the plot on Wikipedia whilst watching it to understand what was going, like to try and get my head around what was going on.
Mike.
I know. And it's not because it was really, really convoluted, or I suppose it was a bit, but it's just because I thought this was so badly directed that I couldn't tell and edited.
Really
It's
badly
just really
edited.
jarringly edited. I couldn't understand what was happening at any given moment.
So I followed the plot very well, and I was very proud of myself for doing that.
Yeah.
But
Well
it was
done. Gold
because
star.
thank you. It was because I'd seen it before, and I was just sort of remembering it in real time.
Right, yeah.
But also, I will admit that I kept on. I would rewind like 10 seconds a lot. Anytime a character dropped in a chunk of dialogue that explained what was going on, I was like, right, I'm just going to quickly listen to that again, because he said that in about 3 seconds, and it was a huge amount of plot. So I'm just going to listen to what he said again.
Yeah. And also the new characters introduced come thick and fast. It's like,
I actually loved that.
oh, I did not. Like, it was like, I kind of would have been on board with just these two guys. The setup of it, where it's like these two guys wake up from hypersleep, what's going on? They're the only people on this ship. And then every 5 minutes, there's like another person that wakes up or appears with another story or another piece of plot information. And you're like, what's going on?
Yeah, I have to say, I really liked the way they were just steadily adding in characters with backstory and new little elements to this universe. And there's so much more going on than you thought.
Yeah, because it's
I
trying
really
to
liked
reveal
it.
bits
Yeah,
as it goes. Like, I think the concept is a really interesting one. But
I agree.
They didn't deliver it how I would have liked them to deliver it.
I think this is a really good story, and it could have potentially been a really good horror film.
Yeah.
But it's not. It was badly directed.
I actually really liked the whole thing.
Did you? Oh,
It's pretty badly made.
Yeah.
But you liked it.
But it's
That's
like,
good.
it's fun.
Yeah, I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Like, overall, the bit at the very end, I was just like, it's still very stupid. The editing made it unwatchable. In places.
Yeah.
But I was really enjoying like the midsection when we were just sort of like making our way through the ship, and Dennis Quaid's getting, is it Dennis Quaid or
Yes,
Randy?
Dennis Quaid.
Just getting
Yeah.
crazier and crazier. Yeah, really liked it.
Wow.
Surprised to say that.
I wish I had liked it. I really wanted to. I tried, but I thought it was unwatchable.
Sorry for putting you through this, Mike.
So let's talk about the concept then of the film, as opposed to the other stuff, which was unwatchable. So basically, you start off with this character of Bauer, and he wakes up out of hypersleep. Now, hypersleep is something which we've seen time and time again. It's a well-known sci-fi trope. You go into hypersleep when you're going on big space voyages, and this guy wakes up, and the audience don't know anything about what's going on. And it's like that for a lot of the film. You're kind of like gaining bits of knowledge. And I really loved that kind of aspect of it. And it starts off with that's the horror of it at the start, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love that setup as well. I love the idea that these characters wake up with amnesia, and so we literally know as much as they do. We come into it with them. It's like they've woken up on this ship. Where are they? When are they? What's going on? Where is everyone left? It sets up a really good mystery, doesn't it? The hypersleep thing. I think.
He also, I like the way that he reads off the inside of a locker. Extended hypersleep may cause amnesia.
Thank you. Exposition.
Good to
Needed
know.
that.
He might as well have just said, "Oh God, I just can't remember anything." Oh, I've got amnesia. 'Cause he's got a little booklet.
Yeah, exactly.
How to have amnesia in a film.
It sets up this body horror element as well at the start, doesn't it? Because he's like, we talked about the veins in Event Horizon when they're popping out.
Oh yeah, it's good, isn't it?
Pulling veins from his skin, which has grown over his skin because he's been in hypersleep for so long.
Also, just the kind of I think it's the first shot we see of him, because it snaps from he's daydreaming, he's dreaming about his wife, and it's lovely, pure white and dreamy and lovely, and it snaps straight into a close-up shot of him screaming inside a mask.
Yes,
and it's a really restrictive mask. It's a bit like Bane's mask.
Yeah, it is a bit. Yeah,
it's a bit Mad Max Fury Road, isn't
it?
it?
A lot of this was Mad Maxy, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's got lots of elements like that.
Yeah.
And that there's that body horror of him just waking up, and like you said, the peeling off stuff.
Yes.
There's a lot of it's a fertile ground for body horror being in space.
Yes.
And the mixing of the necessary technology it would take to get us into deep space, and sort of the physical sacrifice we'd have to make, and it would be quite graphic, and there would be a lot of medical stuff that goes on to get you into hypersleep. And that can be, it's squeamish, isn't it? To think about the procedures of it.
It is. Again, that's a really cool idea, isn't it? Like the toil, like the what that inflicts upon the human body and psyche and everything going into space for that long as well. Yeah.
And like you said, the idea of all that in this film, inflicting that toll on you, the idea is it's really there in this film. Execution, not sure, but the ideas are really good.
Yeah.
So that body horror element goes further, though, doesn't it, into some of the other characters? Like, there's this menace on the ship, which we don't know what this menace is.
And they're very Mad Maxy as well.
Yeah.
Aren't they?
So what did you think about that? What did you think about the creatures and how we find out about them?
I tell you what, this film is ruined by if you've seen it once a long time ago and you're constantly trying to remember what the explanation of everything is. It's not a good way to watch this film because I was just like, so what are these guys? I know what these guys are. What's their deal? And I couldn't get past that because they don't make a lot of sense for a lot of the film.
I thought it made sense.
They were people that were driven mad by Pandorum, right? Is that what it was? And they turned into like feral.
More than that, yeah. They also were pumped full of some mad enzyme.
Oh, that's it. The
that
enzyme.
accelerated evolution.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah, I mean, I felt like these monsters. Basically, this felt like the Descent in space to me. Do you remember the Descent?
It is
what I was going to ask you guys. So yeah, if Event Horizon is The Shining in space, this is the Descent in space.
Exactly that. Yeah. It is exactly that. Yeah, the look of it, the kind of the use of the sort of neon tube lights that they use at times. The lighting of it. There's a moment when two of them have to hide like underwater from the monsters, and they come up slowly, emerge from them. That is like again taken completely from the Descent. I would say, and the monsters look quite like the things from the Descent as well, don't they?
Yeah, and again, that's a similar idea because in the Descent, they're a group of humans which have evolved into these weird cave-dwelling creatures.
Exactly. So where they don't need eyes anymore and stuff. And exactly. Yeah. It's the same concept.
So what it turns out to be in this one is the creatures are actually the rest of the crew. And it's important to know that this ship is like an arc ship, isn't it?
Yeah.
So these crew members have been released and have adapted to this living on a ship, but they've also been tortured.
Yeah. Are they crew though, or are they the descendants of the crew that were released and tortured?
Because millions of years. It was thousands of years.
900 and something years.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
But they've evolved quicker because of this weird enzyme in their system.
I couldn't help but think they were using the wrong enzyme. Because the point of the enzyme was everyone was being fed the enzyme because it was going to help them. It was going to jumpstart evolution, which is a sci-fi term that I really hate most of it. Even though I'm well aware that we're now going to do a film later on at some point that will probably use that, and I'll say I love it. But
I can't wait.
But I don't like that. But yeah, they were being fed that to jumpstart evolution to make them cope with life on the new planet that they were going to go and inhabit. And as soon as they were like, yeah, but then it made these guys go crazy. It's like, well, you were using the wrong stuff. Like, if this is what it does to you, why were you pumping it full of yourself?
So the reason for that is because they were all tortured. Their families were tortured by Peyton, who turns out to be Gallo. So they're all tortured by Gallo because there's a whole bit when you find out what happens. There's like this guy who has carvings, like cave painting carvings of what happens. And in that story, we basically find out all the mystery's gone. So Gallo goes crazy. He gets Pandorum. He kills the rest of the flight crew. And then he starts taking people out from their chambers, their cryogenic sleep, and starts torturing them. And then he tortures more and more people. He puts them all into like a containment place. And then over the years, these people have to learn to survive. They haven't got food. And they evolve into these crazy, like, carnivorous, human-eating creatures.
Yeah.
Which is mad.
It's mad. Again, it's quite a cool idea.
It's also like Serenity, isn't it?
Yes, the Reavers.
Yeah,
they're the
Reavers.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I thought as well.
But it's done a lot better in Serenity. I love the idea of the Reavers in Serenity where it's like, well, it's more like Event Horizon, I guess, isn't it? They've gone out to the edges of space and they've not been able to deal with being out on the edges of space and have just gone completely mad.
Yes.
And come back cannibalistic.
Although that's what they think, isn't it? And then, spoiler alert, it turns out that they have been pumped full of some sort of drug. And that's what causes the Reavers to be Reavers. Yeah, that's what
is that in the
film?
Oh,
you get the origin of the Reavers, and it turns out the government created them by accident, and it was this big secret.
Why? What were they? It was on that planet Area.
So it was like they were pumping. They were pumping this gas that would make people more docile, so that they would obey. Essentially, right, yeah. But for like 10% of the population, it had the opposite effect, where they became aggressive and feral, and that's the Reavers. Forgot that. So good, but yeah, that it's really interesting. Yeah, that concept, I suppose, has been tried in a few different films, kind of thing. I loved that as well. These like feral creatures also wear this like spiky leather, like fetish gear as well. Yeah, they just become Mad Max people.
Yeah, and they're carved into their faces and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Not going to save you. Get the hell out of there.
But that entire concept of the sort of enzyme is, I'm guessing you guys probably have you read Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky?
No.
It's really good. It's basically this kind of story, but told a million times better. It's basically the main premise is humanity is trying to colonize different planets, and they have one planet, and then all of humanity basically dies except for one ship which goes out. But they drop this enzyme which is supposed to make. They were going to drop monkeys on that planet, and they were going to evolve faster so they could become the next group of humanity that they could train up.
Is the enzyme thing a legit thing? Am I being a complete idiot by saying that it's
in this? But in this one, because there's no monkeys, it goes to spiders, and then these spiders become this crazy civilization, and then this other Ark ship comes back, and it's all about that. But it's fascinating, and the way they describe it in that book is brilliant. So I highly recommend that. Children of Time.
Space spiders,
but it's better than it sounds.
No, it sounds good. I mean, that's the thing. Like this kind of thing, if it was done well, it's such a cool idea.
Yeah. But I can see why, but in the same way that Event Horizon isn't perfect.
Definitely.
This isn't perfect.
No.
But it's got really good points to it.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Like, well, you guys have seen way more than me at this point, but it seems like have we had like a really, really brilliant horror film in space yet that isn't an alien film? So it isn't about aliens, but is about the horror of space. You know, with these kind of themes about going mad from the vastness of space that are done really well, that aren't flawed in the way that maybe these two movies are.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's still yet to be made because it's such a cool idea and it's such an understandable concept in some ways. It's amazing it hasn't really been done in a horror way yet.
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned this on the pod before. James Smith's books, The Explorer and the sequel, The Echo, they deal with people going just completely batshit in space over something that is impossible for the human mind to comprehend.
Right.
And I think they do them incredibly well. But as far as films go, and I would say that both of those books are crying out to be made into a film.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like him as an author, and I follow him on Twitter, and I would love for that to happen for him because he would make a load of money and it'd be really good for him.
Yeah, I mean...
but yeah, they're very good. I really recommend them. I've recommended them before, I think. Yeah.
It's such an interesting... And there are so many films like that set on Earth that basically are almost the same thing. Like there were parts of this that reminded me a bit of Jacob's Ladder. Have you seen Jacob's Ladder? Yeah. There's parts of that reminded me of this. And there's a lot of films.
Did you think?
I think it's just some of the effects or the quick cuts or the kind of like bodily... The part when he's in the tank and his skin's, all of that stuff. Some of those effects and visuals that you see reminded me a bit of Jacob's Ladder.
There's some, like, when he's when Bauer's really losing it towards the end of the film, when there's like the close-up stuff that's a bit Aronofsky-ish. Also reminded me a little bit of Jacob's Ladder then.
Yeah, because Jacob's Ladder did it really to really interesting effect, but that idea of like the madness being portrayed with jerky camera movement and quick editing and fast movement and slow movement and all that kind of thing, which I think is what they were going for with this, because the editing and the camera work is quite jarring, and I guess it was deliberate to try and portray that madness and disorientation, I guess, if I'm being kind.
Yeah, they definitely do that, don't they?
We all know Pandorum is greatly affected by any substantial psychological trauma. It has an emotional trigger effect.
That's what they say.
How do you think you would react if you knew the truth?
The truth. About what?
And Bauer uses a laser razor.
Oh, I love that.
I
bit.
love that.
That's what that
cool.
reminded me, because you always say this. There's certain things in sci-fi, like little funny, futuristic style things. Like when we watched Silent Running.
Yeah.
There was the pool table, but it was square.
Yeah, just make it sci-fi.
Yeah. Just make it a little bit sci-fi, a little bit futuristic.
It actually reminded me of Superman shaving.
It's so good. I loved that moment.
I absolutely loved it. I only just said that because I was looking in my notes and I've just written in block capitals, laser razor.
I actually put laser razor on my notes as well. It was obviously a key part of the film.
I just loved it when he was doing that. I was like, that's cool.
Looked very satisfying.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Because you can shave off a whole beard to clean shaven in one swoop.
Yeah.
Imagine if you were Gillette and you had the laser razor and you could do in your ads
Oh my God.
like a full beard, and then the guy in the ads just going like Bauer, just clean shaven.
Just straight
That's
off.
it. That's the killer app. I mean, all these razor companies, guys. Let's get serious right now. They're all just adding another blade or making it a little bit smoother.
Yeah.
Someone's got to sort out this laser razor. If you want to take the market, you need a laser razor.
I wonder if it's all a big conspiracy, because like there'd be nowhere to go from there if you were able to buy in the supermarket a laser razor.
Sure,
that would be it.
Well,
You're saying they've already made it.
I think they're deliberately not doing that.
double-bladed laser razor. Triple bladed laser razor.
Yeah.
Laser razor
Gillette's
Quattro.
Max 7 laser. yeah.
Less charging time.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a whole world out
That's
there, Mike.
true,
We're
yeah.
ready. I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm ready as
The
well.
world is ready for the razor laser.
Good. I'm glad we talked about the most important element of Pandorum.
So, but it did have lots of nice little sort of set bits that they've got in there, and little elements like that, like the barcoding system, which was a bit strange.
Oh, yeah.
So they're all sort of like, it's a bit dodgy, isn't it, with their little numbers they've got on their wrists.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
A bit weird.
Bit Auschwitz.
Yeah.
Bit Auschwitz. And I wasn't entirely comfortable with the ethnic separation of the agriculture.
Yeah.
I mean, we only see one agriculture guy, so
Yeah.
maybe they weren't all...
It wasn't as much of a diverse cast as Event Horizon, was it? So that was more apparent in some ways as well.
Yeah, but to have the diversity come from a guy who doesn't speak English, and then you look at his army like, oh, right, you're in the agriculture team.
I know.
You're a gardener.
Yeah.
It felt very strange.
Yeah, it did.
You know.
Yeah, but then Nadia, is it Nadia? Her character's got an accent, hasn't she?
Yes, but she speaks English,
Yeah.
and she's only speaking another language to be sort of antagonistic and difficult.
Yeah.
There's a sort of like, it just made me uncomfortable. It's like, oh, there's this guy that can't speak English. Oh, he's a farmer.
It felt like the barcode ID thing was basically set up for the twist at the end for them to realise the two guys are the same person. It felt like it was mainly there for that moment.
But it's also because the way they set it up at the start is the planet's overpopulated, and that they're moving to different planets and colonising those. And then that's why they've done this deep space mission. And then they kind of like, people have become, there's more people about, so that's the only way they can regulate things.
Yeah, it reminded me of Automata, the film we looked at in AI. That I quite like that.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes I complain about it, the sort of like lazy exposition at the start of the film. But it happens quite a lot in sci-fi films, and I guess I'm all right with it. Just where it's like 20, it's same as Event Horizon 2015.
It's establishing the world.
You've got to have the timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the way it started with the 1969, the world population when we landed on the moon was 3-point-something billion, and then it was...
Went up and up
and
up. Yeah.
I like that.
What did you think of the cannibalism aspect in this? It was just a bit... It was like, you could see it's the only food source they've got.
Yeah.
It does make them more terrifying. It's very Descent.
Yeah, I think that element of it is going for the horror, right? It's going for the abject, the repulsive, the scary, and I wish that it had just been just done a little bit better, because I think all of those concepts are really scary. Like that is, you can, in some weird way, you could see that happening in that situation and stuff, but. I don't know if it was conveyed as well as it could have been, or it wasn't shot as scarily as it could have been as well. You know,
it was just very dark, wasn't it? And again, it's the claustrophobic element. It's all very dark. You don't know quite what's going on. It adds to the mystery. But
I think, like I said earlier with the Paul Anderson thing, this felt to me more like how I picture a lot of Paul Anderson films, which is like dark lighting with some kind of neon every now and then, some really choppy editing with fight sequences and shooting and shouting and loud music, and you can't really see what's happening.
I agree, actually. It does feel more like that.
Yeah, and a kind of, I guess, a little bit of a video game story in a way as well, as they've got to get to that thing. I don't know, the reactor. There was to me this felt more like what I know now of Paul Anderson than Event Horizon in a weird way.
Video game aspects.
Yeah.
Because because I know people say that Dead Space is a lot like Event Horizon. And it's sort of got those elements in here again. That's sort of like the spaceship.
Yeah, this really reminded me of Dead Space. Like even down to the weapon he gets is a non-lethal anti-riot gun.
Yeah.
And that's the I can't play scary games because I'm an absolute coward. I've played a little bit of Dead Space, and he's like a miner, isn't he?
Something like
the
that,
character. And the weapon that he's got is not designed to be a gun. It's like to do mining or something. Like it's a tool, not a gun. So you can't really kill your enemies in Dead Space. You can like shoot off a limb. Probably talking out my arse here because I've only played like the first 10 minutes and I got too scared. But it's very similar, and he gets the sort of wrist-mounted anti-riot gun.
Yeah.
He is later in the film able to explode somebody's head with that. So
right, yeah.
Describing it as a non-lethal anti-riot gun.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all of a sudden, doesn't it?
Generous.
Turns out to be pretty lethal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, you've got this character. So Gallo is very much like Weir, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
But I think better. I think Dennis Quaid is great in this. I really enjoyed him.
I thought he was good.
Yeah, Dennis Quaid is good. He is really good. Yeah.
And Norman Reedus was in this randomly as well.
I know.
So, yeah, he shows up, and I remember I was watching it, and I thought, that guy looks like Norman Reedus. And then I just carried on with the film, and then the credits rolled, and Norman Reedus was credited. So I was like, I guess that was who that was.
Yeah, because I thought it was. I was like, it looks like Norman. And then his voice was so different to
that was
Daryl.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, wow. Is it Norman? And it took me a while to figure it out because,
he's still as grubby, though, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like all
He
of the
smears
characters,
stuff all over.
Yeah.
It's great.
but all the characters get like more and more dirty throughout the entire film, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just speaks to what the ship's like. 'Cause the whole ship's all, like we said, dark and dingy and obviously a bit disgusting because it's just been floating around for thousands of years.
Yeah,
The
with a
ship
bunch
is-
of people,
yeah,
dead people.
The ship is disgusting. The thing that I like the most, and it's part of the kind of like claustrophobic feel of the film, there's like tentacly pipes that they all have to climb through. If they, the doors aren't working, so they have to go through the equivalent of like a Star Trek Jeffries tube. But instead of like a nice clean Jeffries tube, it's like slimy, greasy pipes that don't even seem to be connected to anything.
Yeah.
It's very claustrophobic. It's creepy. It's weird. And it did give it that bit of Lovecraftian weirdness because it's like, why is this ship built of slimy pipes?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it felt a bit alien-like as well, didn't it, in some ways? And also the descent. Like, I think the grubbiness and the way the characters become more grubby and almost feral is the thing that happens in the descent as well. The way that these women slowly become like those creatures. You can't tell the difference between them at the end and stuff. Yeah, and I think it was going for that kind of thing as well, in a way.
But it's a bit weird having that on a spaceship as well, because it's not what you normally think of in sort of the stereotypes. You think of a spaceship, you think of like clean, futuristic, it's nice and new, everything's sort of sleek, everyone's got pure white spacesuits on.
Yeah.
This is going for that horror element, and by doing that, it's taking a bit of what happens on planets and real life, and that kind of like human element makes it more horrific.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? It's like we said about Event Horizon, how they gave it an atmosphere. They gave literally the planet an atmosphere in order to give it a bit of stormy weather and like that. Maybe if you're going to make a horror film in space, you want to be able to find a way to add those elements. Otherwise, it's a bit too sterile in some ways, maybe, for horror. I don't know.
I quite like that. I feel like the sterile environment is quite a alien and freaky kind of situation to be in.
Yeah,
as well.
I agree. I think you can still make something really scary in that sterile environment. Yeah, it's true.
But they go for the horror stereotypes a lot more with these films, just to clearly mark them out as horror.
Make them more visceral and gross, I guess. Yeah.
So I suppose that's a similar thing to what we were saying when we talk about artificial intelligence films.
Yeah.
They're not as scary usually because they are quite sterile.
Yeah.
And things like that. Yet you get something like 2001, which is probably one of the best examples of like sterile space horror
Yeah.
that there's been, because that film is creepy.
Yeah. And it's, exactly. And it's super sterile. And I guess to the other extreme where it's so cold that it's freaky in a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
More of a mind fuck.
Yeah.
So talking about mind fucks, what did you think about the twist on twist?
Shit.
I thought you were like, shit. Like, as in, it's really good.
Shit. It was shit.
Oh, I thought it was
like,
all right.
You're talking about them being underwater the whole time,
Yeah, but
right?
I like when, so basically what happens, they open the ship viewing thing, whatever it is.
Window.
Yeah, viewing
They
window.
open the window and
the
have a look
viewing
out.
thing. And it's all dark. And that kind of, I found that idea initially terrifying, as in they've got so far into space.
Well, yeah, that's what's good. That's what's so disappointing about it, though,
Yeah.
because they were so close. And this was the thing I was struggling to remember the whole film. And even when they open the shutters and it's all black, and I still didn't remember what was going on, and I still had that. I had the same feeling of they're so close to something so great. Like ending it with, we've been in space so long that we've ended up in this
Where are we?
insane place where we're
Like in the
far
Event
away.
Horizon world almost.
Yeah. They're so close to such a good ending, and then you see it like a whale or something. Space
sort of like
whale.
luminescent.
Yeah.
It's like the
creatures.
end of The Village when they turn out to be in a town, you know, like
Right.
it's like that, isn't it? But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, there is something that takes, I guess it's a cool surprise in a way. I certainly didn't see it coming last night. I didn't expect them to be underwater, you know?
Yeah.
They're not even in space.
Not even in space that whole time. But also that kind of feels like it just shits all over everything you've just seen in a way, in a weird way. I don't know.
But that explains why they don't do the classic airlock scene or anything like that.
Yeah.
Because they physically can't do it because they've got such a twist. You can't do any of the space horror.
But also, is this something I'm missing or have I misremembered this? But aren't there shots of outside of the ship?
No,
and
but
they're
that's
in space.
That's when we're flashing back to Gallo when he was on the flight deck before it had landed.
So every time we're on the Elysium, whatever it's called, in the present day, we don't ever see from outside the ship.
You don't see it very much. I think you just see it at the start.
Right.
Yeah. And maybe when Leland is telling the story of the Elysium and Gallo going insane, I think you see some external shots then.
But you do get sort of like, so that idea at the beginning that Earth is gone, all of the planets are gone, and they're all that's left of humanity. That's kind of what drives Dennis Quaid mad, isn't it?
That's what causes him to turn into this sort of demonic but also messianic kind of figure.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's like he calls himself a devil or something, doesn't he? A god or a devil or something like that.
Yeah, he says it can be both because he just wants a pure chaos world,
Yeah.
which is exactly what Weir wants in Event Horizon. He wants that chaos.
Yeah.
There's a really good bit. So Dennis Quaid is good in this film and he goes down that road quite nicely. And the climax of that I thought was amazing, where he's given that speech about wanting this world of pure chaos, but like all the characters are shouting over each other. And we talked about the editing being messy and sloppy in this film, but right at the end there, it's obviously very deliberately done. It's all layered in and everyone's just like losing their minds and shouting at each other and no one's really talking to each other. They're all just yelling and screaming and it was so good.
Yeah.
I really did like that.
Again, it's a really cool idea. It really is. And I suppose we haven't talked about the first little twist that Gallo and Peyton are the same person.
So
right?
so Peyton, Dennis Quaid's name is Peyton through most of the film, and he's haunted by. Well, no, he's accompanied by this guy Gallo, who climbs through those tentacle, spongy, slimy things. Yeah, and he's all naked, and he tells his story of being part of the flight crew, and slowly you are realizing that he might not really be there, and something's actually going on with Dennis Quaid, and then it's revealed that he is a memory of Dennis Quaid's, and actually, so. One thing that I did think when I was watching the film that I remembered from originally watching it was as soon as Dennis Quaid shows up, I was like, I think this dude's bad. Like, it feels like the twist is bad, but I couldn't piece together how in my head. Because
they almost make you think that Bauer's the captain at one point because he looks like he's suffering from Pandorum.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's definitely on the brink from the start, isn't he?
He's got the tremor in his hand. But I do think that Gallo / Peyton at the start of the film, he's not bad, right? He's not faking. He's got amnesia. He doesn't know that he's Gallo and he's a psychopath and he killed everyone. He is in the same boat as Bauer, and he genuinely is. They're on the same team, and he is trying to solve things, and it's not.
That's what I got.
Deception from the character's point of view.
Similarly to Weir, how at the beginning he is kind of on the. He's normal at the beginning,
but he returns to this madness as his amnesia wears off, and he kind of embraces it. Which is what I wanted from Weir in Event Horizon. I wanted that character journey where he voluntarily goes to this dark place and becomes this evil guy, rather than like possession by an otherworldly force. Gallo's just mad. Gallo has full on Pandorum more than anyone else in the film, and loses.
But the fact he's been torturing these people as well, and all this kind of stuff that's in there, it's just, he's quite a bad guy.
Yeah, he's not nice, is he? He's not nice. And I do, like you said, Matt, I like that idea more of Pandorum, that this is psychological and these are people losing it, as opposed to the evil ship possessing people or whatever is happening in Event Horizon. That's the thing. But it's an interesting. What'd you say?
I'm winning you over.
Well, no, you're not, because it's just an interesting example of like how, whether or not the execution or the concept is better. You know,
it's like both of these films kind of almost get there.
Yeah,
but there's just something which is holding them back.
They kind of have the opposite flaws in some ways. I think.
Yeah, but it feels representative of how hard it is to do this kind of horror. In space,
it really is. Yeah. I never really thought about it, but it's true. I don't. There's not been anyone that's done it yet. So,
did you know they were initially going to do 2 sequels after this film?
Oh God!
Because they end up.
What's a sequel to this look like? Because
they're on the planet.
I tell you what. The other thing, because another thing that I hate about the underwater ending is that it gives it this happy ending that I really didn't want at the end of this film. I was so into it when they were all just going completely insane and completely losing their minds. It's so jarring to then be like, we're on a beach.
I know, yeah. It was interesting that both that and Event Horizon had these kind of. I suppose Event Horizon had a little sting at the very end, but they both felt like they could have been a bit nastier, both the way they ended in a way. Yeah,
and a nastier ending would set up a sequel better. Because how do you do a sequel to this film on the planet of Tanis? Because you can't do a psychological horror film, right? Or what? The characters have all got Pandorum, but they've got to make society work?
No, it would be like creating a society and then the creatures would survive, and it'd be a bit like the 100,
right?
Or that like that trauma has stayed with them, maybe, or something. I don't know.
Or I could see them, for some contrived reason, we've got to go back down to the Elysium and.
Yeah, that's true. Just put them back on it again. Yeah. That's probably what would have happened.
There's ways to do
like
it.
The Descent 2, where they suddenly go, you've got to go back down there.
Is that what happens?
Yeah. It's terrible.
Why would you do it?
Yeah.
So at the end of Pandorum, they find out they're on the planet and they're going to start this new society. So that leads us nicely on to what we will be talking about next episode.
Yeah.
So next episode, we will be saving the planet.
Hooray!
Hooray! So we're going to be taking a look at Sunshine, and we're also going to be looking at The Wandering Earth. So both films where people are on a mission to save the world from some catastrophe. And they're both done in very different ways.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing them. I've seen Sunshine. I've seen that a couple of times. Horror film, Mike.
Well, do you know what? I was just about to say, there's another interesting one, right? About, I don't want to spoil anything ahead of next week, but people in space losing their shit.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Getting too close to the sun and losing grip of everything. In fact, maybe that is one of the best examples of that. But anyway, I'll let you guys discuss that next week.
And The Wandering Earth, which I haven't seen, but I know it was a huge, huge blockbuster from the East. And it became a massive hit. It's a crossover hit, isn't it? Because Netflix put it out in the rest of the world and it became quite big last year. I know I saw a lot of press about it, but
so it is available on Netflix, so you are able to watch it ahead of next week's episode, so no excuses.
Excellent.
Mike, thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you for helping us get to grips with these baffling, mysterious, unimaginable horrors of space.
Oh my God. I mean, it was hard to get my head around. I mean, it really was hard to get my head around them both, actually. I still don't quite understand either of them, but I loved it. Thank you very much for having me.
You're very welcome.
No problem at all. So if you want to find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, we are there. We are at Through Sci-Fi or at Through Sci-Fi Pod. We're all over the internet. You can find us and talk to us.
You can email us at journeythroughsci-fi@gmail.com.
You can go to our website, have a little look at that. We've got all of our episodes on our previous series on artificial intelligence. We've got some bonus review episodes on there as well. So have a little look. But in the meantime, we're off.
Bye.
Bye.